Righteous and having salvation, gentle and riding on a donkey, on the colt, the foal of a donkey. Zechariah 19:9 was recognized to be one of those messianic prophecies. Jesus had been in Jericho. He had caused blind Bartimaeus to see. He had called Zacchaeus to be a disciple. Shortly after that, or before that, he'd been in Bethany. He had raised Lazarus from the dead. He had done great, great things. And as he went down into Jerusalem, the people shouted. And that verse gave substance to what they had shouted. Behold, your king comes, righteous, having salvation, gentle, and riding on a donkey, on the colt, the foal of a donkey. I think the Pharisees knew what was happening. We'll see that a little later in the reading when they told Jesus to rebuke his disciples. Maybe some of the people understood. I think they were looking for a king. There had been several times in Jesus' ministry they had tried to forcibly make him a king. And now he came down that street into Jerusalem off of the Mount of Olives, and they were shouting for their king to be there. I want to read to you from Luke chapter 19. After Jesus had said this, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. And as he approached Bethpage and Bethany, at the hill called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and as you enter, you will find a colt tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it to me. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' tell him, 'The Lord needs it.'" Those who were sent went ahead and found it just as he had told them. And as they were untying the colt, its owners asked them, "Why are you untying the colt?" And they replied, "The Lord needs it." And they brought it to Jesus, threw their cloaks on the colt, and put Jesus on it. And as he went along, people spread their cloaks on the road. And when he came near to the place where the road goes down the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices for all the miracles they had seen. "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest." And some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." "I tell you," he replied, "if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out." And as he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it and said, "If you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you, encircle you, and hem you in on every side. They will dash you to the ground, and you and the children within your walls, and they will not leave one stone on another, because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you." John gives us a very interesting perspective into the disciples. He writes, at first his disciples did not understand all of this. Only after Jesus was glorified did they realize that these things had been written about him and that they had done these things to him. I wonder, just in the excitement of the moment, if they just didn't realize any of those things. I mean, the disciples, in all honesty, they had seen some really great things, haven't they? I mean, maybe Jesus coming into the city and going down that descent into Jerusalem and the crowd cheering, maybe it just didn't register that that was just an incredible moment. I mean, think about it. They had seen 5,000 fed. They had seen Jesus walk on water. They had seen Jesus raise people from the dead, cast out demons. He had healed lepers. He had caused blind men to see and lame men to walk. And maybe at that moment, they just didn't realize how significant that event was. But in all of that, I just kind of have one question for you today. Will you allow Jesus to be king? Will you allow him to have his place? Now think about that for a minute. The king makes the decisions. And that's the point I want to drive home today. The king makes the decisions. The servants serve the king. And willing servants gladly provide whatever the king needs. If you don't surrender, you're not under the control of the king. You're not under his protection. And I want you to know this morning, King Jesus provides protection, doesn't he? He provides protection from ourselves. We don't always make the right decisions. We don't always do the right things. We don't always understand the right way to do things. And even from ourselves, God can protect us. King Jesus provides protection from your sin, doesn't he? None of you stand before God because you're righteous on your own. You only stand before God because Jesus gave himself on the cross for your sin. If you want protection from your sin, if you want to find forgiveness, there is only one place to find it, and that is to allow the king to protect you. The king provides us protection from Satan. There is one who wants nothing more than the destruction of your soul. There is one who wants nothing more than for you to never understand the gift of Jesus and what God can do for you. There is one who wants nothing for you except torment. There's only one who can protect you from him. King Jesus. King can protect you from the way of the world. The world's a hard place. A lot of difficult things happen. Sickness, diseases, problems, messed up relationships. Only God can protect you from that through Jesus. One thing that God needs, if you look at that story, is the Lord needs people who make available whatever he needs. I mean, whatever he needs. I mean, don't you really like... The owners, I don't know if there were 2 or 3, the owners of the colt. I don't know how many owners it had. They are unnamed, but don't you love their attitude? They go to untie the colt, and Jesus says, this is all you have to say. The Lord has need of it. Isn't that just an incredible attitude? It never says they replied to anything. They never said it. They must not have objected because they untied the colt and let it away, right? All it says is you tell them that the Lord has need of it. God needs servants who give them whatever he needs, that they help supply it. I mean, just look around. What are you willing to allow Jesus to use? Now, I know how this list really goes. We're going to do it kind of the way the list usually goes, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. Money. You willing to let Jesus use money? Well, we say, yeah. I mean, we're in church. We're supposed to say yes, right? Let God use money? Yeah, whatever he has. He can have whatever I have. Whatever I've got is his. What does your lifestyle show that? Possessions? How about talent? You going to let Jesus use your talent? Well, yeah, we'll let Jesus use our talent. Do you ever struggle to find out what your talent is? Did you ever try anything? Going to allow Jesus to use that? Now I'm going to meddle, okay? You ready? I'm just going to tell you I'm going to meddle before I meddle, so you're ready for it. This is the hardest one. You going to give Jesus your time? I mean your time. I mean, we talk about possessions and money and all of those things, but when you start talking about time, people start saying, now you're meddling now. Yeah, okay, so let's meddle for a minute. You going to let Jesus use your time? I mean, what occupies your time? I mean, if you're going to list all the things that you're doing and all the things that you're involved in, and you're going to have to start choosing based on priority, which thing is most important with Jesus and time, where does he fit in? Because very honestly, in a lot of lives, he doesn't fit up toward the top. He fits somewhere down toward the bottom. Well, we've got this thing going on, so we'll not do this. And I understand lives are busy. There are things to do, and we have to make choices about that. But where does Jesus fit when you're asking about time? So if I told you to empty out your pockets, would you? If I told you to give, well, we need the keys to all the cars in the parking lot. Now, I'm not going to do that, okay? But that's just kind of an interesting thing. But would you be willing to give up your key? What if I were to say, listen, I need all day Sunday. I just need all day. You know, we're going to forget this stuff about having Bible class for an hour and then worship for an hour. We need all day on Sunday. So from let's say 7 a.m. to let's not go too late because it's school night, 9 p.m., okay? So from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., that's just all Jesus time, but we need that time. Would you be willing to give up that time? Now the thing is, the disciples modeled out what they saw taught, didn't they? They modeled it out. There are no needy persons among them, for from time to time those who owned lands or houses sold them and brought the money from the sales and laid it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone as he had need. Man, in Acts, how often do they meet in the temple courts? Daily. Every day. Now that'd really throw you into a spin, wouldn't it? Now I just don't need some time on Sunday and maybe Wednesday night if you're really good. We need to meet every day. And I know you'd say, I don't know how we're going to fit that in. Well, they met every day to encourage and to build one another up. They were willing to give their time. They saw it modeled out. And there will always be those like the Pharisees. There will always be those who oppose Jesus. Don't you find it interesting that the crowd is shouting, King, and the Pharisees say, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. They knew what was happening. And I love what Jesus says. You know, if they don't cry out, the stones will. Do you realize God's purpose is always going to be fulfilled? If you don't fulfill it, then the stones will. But why did they oppose Jesus so much? He was king. Well, one, he didn't really meet their expectations. He really didn't look like what they were looking for. And sometimes for us, he doesn't look like exactly what we're looking for, does he? I mean, Jesus isn't like this spiritual vending machine where you drop in a prayer, hit a button, and out pops a prayer answer. He doesn't always do exactly what you want him to do. He doesn't behave in the way that you want him to behave. Many times, God's plan isn't our preference. And it wasn't Pharisees' preference. And a lot of times, God doesn't respond the way we think he ought to respond. And very honestly, Jesus didn't respond to the Pharisees the way that they thought he ought to respond. He came with a totally different type of message. So he challenged their way of life. I mean, do you realize at the very heart, he challenged who they were and he challenged their way of life. And isn't that exactly the same reason we don't allow Jesus to be king? He challenges our way of life. He challenges the status quo. He won't let us continue to be what we have always been. If you didn't need change, you wouldn't be a disciple, okay? Let's just start with that. You're a disciple because you need change because you're dealing with sin in your life. If you didn't need change, you wouldn't be a disciple. But one of the greatest things we have to do is allow Jesus to change us and to move us. So we're back to the same question. Will you allow Jesus to be king? Will you allow Jesus to make decisions? Because very honestly, if your decision making is anything like mine, it's flawed. It's messed up. I can't always decide the right thing every time. And we really want Jesus to make decisions because Jesus makes better decisions than we make. So I want you to see just a really short video.
Jesus, I have decided to give you
this.
Really?
Yeah.
You know whoever sits here makes all the decisions, right?
I know, and I'm always making decisions, but you make the perfect decisions, so you just sit right down and start making them.
Wow, I'm honored. I mean, this feels great.
Kathleen, guess what?
I just got my new credit card. It's time to go shopping.
Oh, really? I thought your husband and you were going to pay off debt.
Oh, yeah. I mean, money's kind of tight, but I figured he doesn't have to know about it. So do you want to go with me?
No.
No?
Why?
What I mean is, I don't know. So let me check my schedule and then I'll get back to you.
Okay, yeah, give me a call.
Okay.
Kat, what's going on?
What do you mean?
Well, I'm kind of one-cheeking it here. Look, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. You wanted me to sit here, right?
Well, of course.
And whoever sits here makes all the decisions?
Right.
So what's the problem?
There's not a problem. I don't know what I was thinking. Really, please, here, sit down.
As long as you're sure.
I'm sure.
Okay, so let's start over.
Okay.
All right. Kat, I noticed that you've been losing your temper a lot lately.
Right.
So-
Okay, Jesus, you know what? I know what you're going to say, but, see,
You do?
you don't know the whole situation, you know?
Oh, well, all I'm saying is that your attitude is a decision.
Yes, of course, but I have a lot going on right now.
Well, I know you're under a lot of pressure.
Pressure, Jesus, you don't understand pressure, okay?
This isn't working, Kat.
What?
We can't both sit on the seat. It's either me or it's you.
Okay, I know. You know, I didn't think it was going to be this hard, but here, just take it.
No, I'm not going to take it. You have to give it to me.
Okay, here.
Kathleen, make a choice.
I can't.
You just did.
But when it gets right down to Jesus making decisions, it's really, in reality, it's a little bit harder than that sometimes, isn't it? It's hard to give up control. It's hard to let Jesus make decisions. It's hard to let Him be king sometimes. And where do you really need Jesus to make decisions? Man, how about your marriages? We're talking about meddling, right? How about marriages? You want Jesus to make decisions in your marriages? Because He will. How about with parenting? Need Jesus to help you make decisions in parenting? You going to allow Jesus to make decisions in parenting? How about family relationships outside of that? Brothers and sisters and grandparents, aunts and uncles, extended family. How about church? Going to let Jesus make decisions in church? How about work? Going to let Jesus make decisions at work? We like the idea when things are going bad sometimes, don't we? How about when things are going well? Or maybe they're going too well. Back to that meddling question again. How about time? You going to allow Jesus to be king of time? You're going to let Him make those kind of decisions? How about the struggle with sin? Things that you struggle with, things that you shouldn't do. Things that you should do, but you just don't do. Those internal struggles that really nobody else really knows about. Are you willing to allow Jesus to make the decisions with those? And I'd like to tell you, don't be excited about Jesus for the wrong reasons. There are some people who stood on that road that praised Jesus coming down that hill, and they were excited about Jesus, but they weren't excited about Jesus for the right reason. He wasn't going to be the king that they wanted Him to be. He wasn't going to behave the way that they expected Him to behave. In fact, it's already been recorded in Luke 19 that Jesus, while they were listening to this is a parable earlier, in Luke chapter 19, verse 11. While they were listening to this, He went on to tell them a parable because He was near Jerusalem, and the people thought that the kingdom of God was going to appear at once. So there were people who were standing on that road who did not understand what that triumphal entry was all about. And they were excited about Jesus, but they were excited about Jesus for the wrong reasons. And we have to be careful about that. Some people follow Jesus because they like the idea of salvation from sin, but they don't like to hear words like the commitment of discipleship. So they're looking for an easy solution. And I'm just telling you, if you're looking for an easy solution, King Jesus isn't the right answer. Some get really excited about Jesus because they have some short-term problem that they see, and they just want Jesus to swoop in, and they want Him to fix the short-term problem and save them from their own decision. Then they're ready for Him to swoop back out so they can do their own thing again. You know what? If that's the reason you're looking for Jesus, you're going to get excited about Jesus, but for the wrong reason. Because Jesus isn't going to allow you to play games like that. Now, can Jesus rescue you from bad decisions? Yes. Can Jesus deliver you from your sin? Yes. Can Jesus help you if you struggle through the commitment of discipleship? Yes. And can Jesus remove a short-term problem? Absolutely. But Jesus wants commitment. He wants people who are dedicated to allowing Him to be King. So if you want serious transformation, King Jesus is the answer. If you want a quick solution, He's not. If you want to become what God wants you to be, Jesus is the answer. If you want Jesus just to give you the things that you want because you want them, then He's not. If you want to surrender, Jesus is the answer. If you just want Jesus to help you have your own way, He's not. So if you're going to be excited about Jesus, be excited about Jesus because of what He can really do for you. So you're back to the same question. Will you allow Jesus to be King? Will you allow Jesus to make the decisions? Will you recognize Him for the King that He is? Will you stand up and boldly proclaim the King is coming and the King is here? Are you willing to boldly proclaim that Jesus is the Son of God? Are you willing to be committed to discipleship? I mean committed to discipleship. That means giving up a lot of things that you might enjoy doing. It means turning away from sin. It means being godly. It means allowing Jesus to make the decision. Will you make a covenant with Him? I mean, will you stand up before family and friends and say, I will make a covenant with Jesus. I'll be baptized for the forgiveness of my sins. I will form that union, that relationship with Him. I'll be united to Him in death, burial, and resurrection. And then will you walk from there living a godly life where no decision is made without asking the King what you should do? Do you realize that those same people who were shouting on this day, a week later would be shouting something drastically different? They would be shouting, "Crucify Him. Crucify Him." Because deep down they didn't allow Jesus to be King. And that's a decision that every one of us will make. And the inability to make a decision is a decision. Will you allow Jesus to be King? If you need to respond this morning, we ask you to do that while we stand and sing.